Hi there, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Carrie with bluescitypickin, and if you are new here, I am a part-time reseller that goes out to thrift stores, garage sales, estate sales, and attempts to find things to flip for a profit on eBay. Welcome back to Ching number 23, and I'm going to tell you, this was one of my best weeks ever. Not sure if my strategy on buying is working out. Not sure if it was just a hurricane of delightful things that made it such a great week, but I am just over the moon excited with the week that I had. And this is for the week of February the 2nd. So for the week of February the 2nd, I had over $1,300 in gross sales. That's their all-in purchase price. The buyer and I agreed to about $1,000 in purchase price, so that excludes taxes and shipping. I paid about $244 for that inventory, and so my profits for the week were $656.79. There's no words for that. It's crazy. It's amazing. I love it. So while last week was definitely slower at just $324 of profit, this week at $656 is definitely higher than I think any of my cha-chings that I've had so far. So I'm super excited about that. I had 41 orders, but sold 40 orders and sold 42 different things. I had a couple of multi-quantity orders associated with some vintage Atari parts. My average sales price, my average profit for the week was $15.64. And anybody that's been hanging around for a while knows that my goal for this year is to get that average profit above $15 per item, and completely ecstatic about that this week. My maximum profit for the week was $47.56. And my lowest profit for the week was $4.23. But I do believe that was on one of the... Nope, it was on something that I actually bought recently but made a mistake on. But it's gone now already, so happy for that. I had an average time in the store of 73 days. Something sold in less than a day, and then an item sold after 293 days. So at the end, I'll come back and share like the store allocation of where I bought things that are selling, and as well as the genre. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So the first thing that sold on February 2nd was a mug. This was a Gail Pittman coffee mug. I paid 50 cents for this at one of our local thrift stores. The buyer paid $18.95. And when I say that, that is excluding taxes and shipping. So that's just the price that the buyer and I agreed to. So I made $14.39 after taxes, fees, cost of goods, etc. And it had been listed for 141 days. This next item is a circle stained glass sun catcher. It was an iris. I paid $3 for this at an estate sale back in July. The buyer paid $13.95, so I made $6.96 after 184 days. That is definitely something that I would not buy again in like that size. I'm not putting all stained glass items and sun catchers out of my buy pile, but I mean, if I got it for $1 and it was a little bit bigger, then maybe, but this one was not a win for me. Next item is a new with tags Disney Sleeping Beauty comic crossbody bag. This actually came from a home clean out. Buyer paid $16.15. I had paid $10 for it, and so I profited $4.50 after 149 days. Next item is a lot of 33 vintage plastic, I would say cowboy and Indian figures. They were red, green, and yellow. I got these from an auction back in May, and it was where I had bought like some big lots out of closets and shelves, and so I have $0 into it at this point. The buyer paid $18.80, so I made $16.74 after 268 days. Next item is a pair of Crocs Ronda strappy slip-on wedges. I paid $7.30 for these at Goodwill back in the middle of January. The buyer paid $37, and so I profited $23.58, and these sold within a day of listing. Next up is a set of new old stock Atari replacement retaining rings for one of the joysticks. I got these off of Whatnot. You will hear multiple sales related to the Atari buys that I made on Whatnot today. So I have 50 cents attached to this particular item. The buyer paid $8.46, so I made $6.57 after 53 days. Next up is a set of Coach Carrie Ann's Signature C black canvas and patent leather wedge heels. I paid $13.97 for these at Goodwill back at the end of December, kind of as a trial to see if they would and could sell. And they did. I had a coupon in my store for 25% off shoes. And so the buyer paid $29.25. I had paid $13.47, and so I made $10.09 after just 24 days. Next up is a set of two. This is a replacement cartridge slot connector for the Atari. The buyer paid $14.90 each. However, they did get a discount for buying in bulk, but I had 50 cents each attached to these, and so my profit between the two of them was $22.22 after 53 days. Next up is something I bought for myself, and then I never ended up wearing it. This is a Disney H&M Mickey Mouse hoodie. It was pink, very subtle. I paid $3 for this at an estate sale. I don't remember when. Buyer paid $19, and so I made $9.59 after just 17 days listed. Next up is one of my better sales for this week. This was an Analon titanium nonstick wok pan. I picked this up at Goodwill at the very beginning of January for $10.54. It sold for $49, which was my asking price, and so I made $34.10 after 26 days listed. Next up is one of the older items in my shop that sold this week. This was an Enzo Mantovani. It was a 1/4 button wool sweater, size extra large. I paid $3 for this at Goodwill back in May, and it sold for $23.12, so I made $15.79 after 251 days. Next item is this Waterford silver plated ornament. I paid $5.28 for this at Goodwill back in September. You know, I've had more ornament sales after Christmas than I had before Christmas. So I just find that very, very interesting. No clue why. Buyer paid $18, and so I made $9.12 after 138 days. Next item is something I bought back in the middle of January. This is a Casio black graphing calculator. When I looked it up in the store, I thought the sale price was closer to $29, but when I got it home, it was closer to $19. And then I was like, oh, goodness, I just need to get this out of my house. And so I had paid $8.34 for this at Goodwill. Buyer paid $17.10, so I made $4.23, but it did sell within 4 days, so I got my money back, learned my lesson, and moved on. Next item is a First Alert smoke and carbon monoxide tester. I paid $10.64 for this at Goodwill back in September. It sold for $22, so I made $8.12 after 139 days. If you can get it for a lower buy-in, it's kind of a no-brainer. I've sold multiple of these items over the past year, but that particular one did not end up being as good of a sale as what I was hoping. Next item is a puppet. This is a Goofy Donkey vintage 1987 Pack-a-Luck puppets. I paid $1.30 for this at an estate sale back in December. Buyer paid $23.20, so I made $18.16 after 38 days. Next up is a, goodness gracious, I'm glad this is gone because I made a mistake, and yeah. So this is an IBM Selectric typewriter. I did plug this in at the store, and I did test it at the store, and it was working just fine at the store. My store has a no return policy, so it's very important you test the electronics as much as you can before you buy them. So after all of that, and knowing that this item sells for $150, $160 when it's working, I picked it up and I paid up for it. I paid $31.88 back in October. Well, I got it home. It was working. Then I started playing around with it some more, and it just kept sticking and it wasn't working, and I just sat on it and did nothing with it. So a few weeks ago, I was finally like, I got to get rid of this thing. So I went ahead and listed it as a basically for parts only type purchase and said, look, it powers on, the letters stick, yada, yada, yada. Buyer paid $50. And then I did make a little bit money on the shipping. I'm not exactly sure how, but I was happy with that. So I ended up profiting $42.56. It was only listed for 13 days, even though I'd had it since October. So I was happy that that was gone, and it has found a new home. Next up is one of my, I think, if not my best, one of my best of the week. This was a set of Danner boots. They were military Danner boots. I picked these up on February 2nd. I went ahead and got them listed. They sold the same day. I had paid $13.60 for these at Goodwill. They sold for $70, and so I made $47.05 in 0 days after listing. Woohoo, yippee-doo-doo. Next up is a Docatot Deluxe Cabana. I picked this up at Goodwill back in early January. It was new, but had open box. I paid $6.37 for it. It sold for $24, so I made $14.20 after just 17 days. So woohoo. Next was a little bit longer tail item. This was a Brooklyn Bamboo Organic Baby Kids Hooded Towel. It was a organic bamboo material, which was the only reason I had picked it up. I did pay $1 for it at one of our local thrift stores back at the end of August. It sold for $10.76, and I made $7.02 after 151 days. Next up is a Lakeshore Vocabulary Match and Sort Language teaching thing. It was new, unopened. I picked this up at Goodwill for $2.99 back in August. It sold for $14, so I made $8.34 after 184 days. Next item is this vintage leather zip black pouch, another item that I picked up at Goodwill in the middle of January. I paid $4.17 for it. It sold for $14, and so I made $7.92 after just 5 days. Next up is a set of 4 gold-plated, gold-tone W.M. Rogers flatwares. This is dinner forks. Buyer paid $8. This came out of a parent house clean out. So I made $6.62 after 195 days. Next up, this is an item that I would not buy again. This was a vintage Swarovski crystal penguin. It was about this tall. I paid $7.50 for this at an estate sale back in November. This one sold for $16.15, and so I made $5.79 after 36 days. Next 2 sales are more of the Atari whatnot sales. The first one was a set of 4 replacement retaining rings, similar to the one I had sold earlier in the week. It sold for $8.46. I had 50 cents into it, and so I made $5.48 after 56 days. And the next was a lot of 2. It was quantity 2 of a lot of 5 of replacement rings for a different Atari part. Buyer paid $8.05 each. I had 50 cents into each lot, and so I made $12.21 after 56 days there. Next is the longest tail item in my store. This was an ASOS design. It was a men's 2XL tall was the reason I bought it, because it was an interesting size and it was really cute. It was brown and it had cotton floral cutouts. And so I had paid $6.99 for this at Goodwill last April. So when somebody asked me for some additional measurements, I was like, yes, please buy this. And then later the day, they bought it for $15. And so I made $7.40 after 293 days, and I learned my lesson. Next item is this vintage 1950s retro style swing line stapler. This came out of an auction back in June where I bought a massive desk with everything in it for like $2.50. The desk is outside in the garage and I use it for my picture taking and things that I do out there. And then I have made bukus of money out of all the things that were in the desk, on the desk, around the desk. The reason I bought it was there was a Panasonic tape recorder with a mini cassette in there. Little did I know that that wasn't the banger that was in there. It was old Scotch tape gift wrap tape that has like just the little tabs that come out. I sold those suckers for like $20 a piece. So yeah, I mean, I've made bukus of money off this desk. The stapler sold for $13.85, and so I made $10.68 after 225 days. Next up is a pair of shoes that I bought from Goodwill in the middle of January, and right after this is another pair of shoes that I bought at the same time. This was a Cork by Corky's women's orange leather wedge heel. I paid $8.34 for these. They sold for $30.60, so I made $17.53 after just 5 days. Right at the sweet spot there. Next up is this pair of Merrill Moab Flight shoes. So I had listed these as pre-owned. They were practically new. I could see no signs of wear, but there were no tags on it. There was no stickers or anything indicating they were new. So I was able to get $48 for these. I had paid $13.56, and so I profited $26.38 after just 9 days from that Goodwill buy. Next up were a couple of things that sold within the same day, and that kind of surprised me because I picked these up just because I really liked the color. I know the Fiesta brand, and when I looked them up, I didn't see any other ones listed. So the first one that sold was this Fiesta Tangerine Orange tray. Like I said, I picked these up at Goodwill back at the beginning of February. I paid $5.17 each for them. This one sold almost immediately for $24, and so I made $14.76 same day it was listed. And the next one was this avocado green color, and it sold for $25, and so I made $15.78 in 0 days. So keep a lookout for these tray platters. It was not the traditional ceramic Fiesta. It was like a metal with a coating on it that made it feel like plastic. They did not go to the same buyer. So I was really happy with those quick flips on that. Next up is a set of 4 Oneida Brahms dinner forks. I bought these when I bought the huge lot that I sold a few weeks ago. These were just some leftovers, so I have nothing into these after I had already made the main flatware grouping. So they sold for $39, so I was able to make $32.40 after just 6 days of them being listed. Another Atari replacement cartridge. This sold for $14.90. I had 11 cents into this, and so I made $12.36 after just 57 days. Getting down to the last few sales. This was a corksicle collab with the company called Stance. I'm not familiar with it. It was a tumbler. It was in really nice condition, and I picked this up at a local thrift store for $2.07. And because it was a Corksicle collab, I looked it up in the store and it seemed like it was worth a little bit. So it did sell for $16.15. And so I made $10.42 just 20 days. Next up is this Studio Pottery Brown, I would call it a fermentation jar. It had its lid. I paid $4.99 for this at Goodwill back in November. And it sold for $29.95. And so I made $19.16 after 61 days. Next up is this Lululemon Ebb to Street tank top. I paid $4.23 for this at Goodwill back in early January. It sold for $22, so I made $14.40 after just 23 days. Next item is this Douglas Cuddle Toy Golden Retriever plush. I picked this up at a local thrift store right after Christmas for $2. It sold for $11.95, so I made $7.93 in just 33 days. Hokas. I think this is the first pair of Hokas that I've sold, even though I have picked up probably like 4 or 5 pair over the last few months. So I'm hoping that maybe my adjusting pricing on some of these Hokas will get them moving, because I'm still super ecstatic with just 20 bucks profit on them, because I don't clean the shoes. I just sell them as is. So they're super easy to list, etc. But this was a Hoka 1 Bondi 6. This was a size 11 frost gray vapor blue sneaker. I paid $12.41 for them at Goodwill, so I did pay up a little bit compared to normal sneaker price, but they sold for $42, so I made $24.49 in just 4 days. So I was very happy with that. Next item is a Lego Star Wars X-Fighter set that was complete. The box was open when I bought this at the estate sale back in October. When I opened it up, there were some minifigures missing and a couple pieces missing. And so I paid $25.75 at the estate sale, and I probably have another $10 to $15 in it on replacing some of the pieces and parts. It sold for $75. And like I said, it says $25.75 here, but I probably have another $10 to $15 in it. At the $25 buy-in, I made $47.56, but it's probably closer to like $30. And I just listed this 11 days ago. So I don't think I would buy this again, just because despite the fact that I made at least $30 on it, I did spend a decent amount of time like going through the pieces, counting the pieces, making sure that the one bag that had been opened, all of the replacement pieces were there. And it just took a little bit too much time, and I had bought it for my family and they decided they didn't want it. So it was just kind of a whole thing. I'm just happy to get my money back and move on from the saga of the open Lego sets. And then last, but certainly not least, was another really nice sale for the week. This was a pair of Stio women's shoes. I bought these at a local Plato's Closet when I went in for their 70% off sale. They had a couple of nice pairs of shoes that looked brand new that were priced low for what I knew that they were. I only paid $6 for these, and they sold for $40. And so I made $34.19 after just 14 days. So don't sleep on your local consignment stores. These shoes that I bought weren't even on clearance. This was just the normal price. And I think I had a coupon from like the last time I had been in there, so to get like $5 off of 15 or 20 or something. And I had bought 2 pairs of shoes. So both the pairs of shoes that I bought from Plato's that day, I have sold, and I made $34 on those, and then I made $16 on the other. So I made $50 on the 2 pairs of shoes that I bought at Plato's that day, which is amazing. So just an absolutely whiz-bang week. I could not be happier that the results were what they were. That being said, today is the Sunday after that week, and I have not sold anything today. So, yeah, not starting this week off with the same bang that I did last week, where I think I sold 10 things on Sunday. So, just the roller coasters of reselling. It's okay. I don't get too hung up in the day-to-day. So just kind of going over the store allocation or the location where I got things and where the profits were from. So Goodwill coming in at $365, so 56%. Not surprised to see that because I have not been out to estate sales at all since I think the middle or early December. There have been plenty of them, but I just have not been able to get to them. My weekends have been very busy, so I just couldn't do it. I had 9% come off of Whatnot, so that was primarily those Atari lots. 4% from auction, 13% from estate sales, and then 17% from other, which I presume is the local thrift stores and consignment sales. So consignment stores. As far as the genres, clothing, household type items, and toys were almost split, a third, a third, a third. Clothing was at 37, household items were at 39, and then toys were at 24. So nice blend of things were going out the door this week. I'm super happy with the results. And if you like this kind of content and want to learn some of the things that I pick up to flip for a profit and come along with me on my journey as I continue to try to improve my average profit per item to $15 in my store this year, check out some of these other videos. There's 22 cha-chings before this that kind of share what works for me as a part-time reseller. And I thank you so much for coming along with me on this journey. If you do not mind, I would love if you could hit a like, subscribe to the channel. Most of the folks that are watching my videos are not subscribed. And then if you don't mind, leave a comment down below on what you thought the best sale of the week was. I would very much appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks so much. Bye.